I think conscious parenting is when you're really trying to do it for the betterment or for the well being of the child. And, whether that's divorce, whether that's separation, it's trying to remember that because a lot can happen, especially like these high conflict situations. We can get really triggered and we can go like, oh, well, but, the partner did this, my ex did this, and so I need to take revenge on that. We tend to think at that time just in terms of logistics. We think, okay, whether they are provided for, they have a home, whether their routine is done, they're going to school and all of that. But think about it from your kids' perspectives. Like their world's changed. They're literally living probably in separate places. They are coping up with not having their parents present all the time. I hate this good girl, good person, good man thing that we have in our world because we all feel like, okay, being good is not shaking the boat. Being good is like just settling in, compromising so that the other person feels good about it. The other person's okay. That's their sense of identity. Don't take that away from your child. Yeah, you get to understand your story. Like, why are these things happening in your life? That why gets answered. And then you can do more things with it.
Welcome to the Just Separated podcast. Hi, I'm Karen Omand, a thanatologist, grief counselor, divorce strategist, and co-author of the Just Separated workbook. I draw on years of personal and professional experience to guide you through the challenges of your divorce. Together, with our expert guests, we'll equip you with the clarity, resilience, and tools to take charge and move forward with confidence. Follow Just Separated and join us as we explore the many different facets of divorce. Welcome to the Just Separate podcast. I'm your host, Karen Omand, co-founder of the Divorce Workshop. Today, we're going to talk about conscious parenting amidst divorce and custody battles. And our expert guest today is Kanika Vasudeva. Kanika is an energy and conscious coach and an Akasha Records reader who helps parents heal emotional wounds, navigating co-parenting challenges, and connect with the soul blueprints of their children to raise empowered, resilient beings. After the heartbreaking loss of her daughter, Kanika turned to energy healing and the Akasha Records, uncovering the hidden patterns, karmic imprints, and generational cycles that shapes how we parent and relate. Today, she guides parents to break free from the inherited trauma, find peace amidst legal or emotional conflict, and raise children who feel deeply seen, safe, and supported. Welcome, Kanika, to the Just Separate podcast.
Thank you so much, Karen. I'm so glad to be here.
And I just want to note for our listeners that Kanika's all the way from Australia. So we are honored that she stayed up late to be on the podcast today.
Well, always a pleasure to talk to you, Karen.
So my first question is, when I was thinking about this topic, conscious parenting sounds calm, it sounds enlightened, but we both know that divorce and custody battles are often anything but that. It can be chaotic, it can be overwhelming, and it can even be driven by anger and blame. So what does conscious parenting really look like in the middle of all that? And how can parents show up for their children when they're struggling? Because you probably seen a lot of parents and co-parenting struggling, and it's probably nothing to do with the children, but more about what they're holding in themselves. So what's your thoughts on that?
I think conscious parenting is when you're really trying to do it for the betterment or for the well being of the child. And, whether that's divorce, whether that's separation, it's trying to remember that because a lot can happen, especially like these high conflict situations. We can get really triggered and we can go like, oh, well, but, the partner did this, my ex did this, and so I need to take revenge on that. Sometimes we can be acting out of the moment, out of our ego, really. So, conscious parenting is just trying to do it for the betterment or the well being of the child. And when I say that, it seems like we're doing everything for the child. Like, I'm just trying to hold the higher ground for the child. But really, what you are doing when you raise your child is you are mirroring yourself, you're mirroring your own hurts. That's what's coming into play. And when you parent your child from that place of unconditional love, from really trying to see them and understand them, you're bringing that to yourself. So it's a two-way street. You're also healing yourself as you're raising your child with that wholeness.
So, how do people become aware of the patterns that they're doing? Like if I've learned over the years that with my mom and my grandmother and probably her mother, that we're very critical, right? And so those are patterns, right? So when you go through a divorce, are many people aware of the patterns that they're doing with their children?
It's very hard, especially that time, to think of that, and being critical. Like, I was raised in a house like that as well. And it's taken me a long time to realize that, well, I'm critical of everyone else, and then I'm very critical of me. And it wasn't me. For me, it was just one of my family members who had that voice when I was growing up. So whatever you're thinking, whatever is really coming out in your life, like if you're getting critical, if your ex is really critical, especially in custody battles and divorce cases, like there's going to be a lot of blaming just because of the situation. There is going to be that because there's property division involved, there's all the financials involved, there's a whole lot of ego that comes in. But we tend to feel better at the expense of letting the other person down, because that's sort of telling ourselves that, okay, look, I was okay, I was fine, and this person did not understand it, my ex did not understand it. So it is a very, very charged situation. But at this point in time, trying to remember, okay, how do I be in my place of calm, that would very much be around just remembering how would you like to be held, like not operating from that defense mechanism, but coming back to it from a place of calmness, especially with your child. Think of the situations. Like with your ex, it's a different thing, and you can, do your texts and phone calls. Probably there is a time period that you need to do that to be able to move on from it as well. But I'm talking just around parenting. Think about the child. And this is why, if you bring your driver back to, well, what is it doing to my child? How can I help my child? That will bring out your higher self. Like, see your little self when you're kids and then parent from there. And often your things will change. The response will change with just that. From trying to understand them, if you see yourself as a little kid.
Yeah, I love that visual. If you think about it, when you're having a reaction or you're angry about some situation, you're co-parenting and you're in front of your child, is to try to stop and just say, and then picture yourself at 5 or 10 and reflecting on that. That's a very good tip, actually, that most probably co-parents or parents even don't even think about.
Yeah, like it can feel as if, oh, why they're reacting this way. Like just yesterday, I was talking with someone and I was giving them an example around the time when I asked my son to clean my room. I must have gotten impatient, so I said it a little bit sternly, and he just went like, well, I don't think you love me anymore. And that was his observation because he felt that I was saying things sternly. And on the one hand, it can feel like, well, I just asked you to clean your room and you are now saying other things and you are actually putting the blame on me, or redirecting the situation. In fact, just running away from your responsibilities. We can give all those meanings to that statement. But as a parent, you're always the adult. The child's always the child. It's your job to stay in the adult mode, not get triggered, and just look at the child and see what is the deeper meaning. Because kids, they're growing up. They haven't learned everything, regardless of whatever age they are at. Maybe they're 5, maybe they're 10, maybe they're 18. They're still learning. You should, as the adult, have a little bit more awareness, or at least more responsibility, that you need to do the emotional pulling there, or the emotional empathy bit. You need to have that a little bit more. So think in terms of your child and go, well, why is he saying that? And what is your child really wanting in that moment? My son, at the face of it, was saying, like, yeah, you are not loving me, but he was looking at it deeper and he was just going, well, mom, you don't seem to be present with me right now. And yes, his remarks sounded very even rude, but it wasn't as much rude. He was just noticing that, well, you're off your game. Like, usually how you speak is not how you're speaking. And if you put that filter on there, that this is just the words the child has, oftentimes we react to the words, we react to what they said, but we can't really put ourselves in their shoes and go, well, this must be what is going on. But if we can put
Yes.
that lens there, then the kids are actually really um, just noticing you and noticing something that is off with you. They might have said something in a very different or a rude way, but they're noticing that something about you is not 100% right. So they're actually a very good mirror for you to go, okay, well, I'm off my game. I need to center myself.
So there's a bit of an awareness there that the people that, as we parent, especially in co-parenting, to become more aware of what you're reflecting. Is that correct? How
Yeah.
you're, yeah. And I'm just thinking, when you're going through, especially those early days of divorce and you're figuring out all the parenting and all that, that you're in a heightened state. So you probably aren't present as much as you were maybe before the divorce.
No, and then there's at the same time so much happening for your kids as well. We tend to think at that time just in terms of logistics. We think, okay, whether they are provided for, they have a home, whether their routine is done, they're going to school and all of that. But think about it from your kids' perspectives. Like their worlds changed. They're literally living probably in separate places. They are coping up with not having their parents present all the time. Yeah, maybe they're not listening to all the bickering all the time, but there was a time when they could run off to one parent and so on. And maybe they liked one more or they preferred one parent more in terms when they were, let's say, uncomfortable when they had a fight, or they would prefer to be with one parent when they needed some advice, those sorts of things. And they don't get to do that anymore because there's an arrangement or there's a new thing that's coming up where they've got to be with one parent one day, the another parent another time. There's a lot of coping that they're doing. They're picking up their stuff, they're living in two houses, they've got different rules for everything, maybe different meal times. Like every single day is very different. And as much as you trying to understand your world, the children, they are just trying to understand, well, what is okay now and how do I feel safe? Remember, our job as parents is to provide safety to our kids, not just physical safety, but emotional safety, psychological safety. And this is the time when they're struggling with belonging because their whole world, every single day or every single week, how they've known and how it is now has changed.
Yeah, I feel that because when you were talking about that, I could feel my own life when I was from that divorced kid. And my parents divorced when I was 6 months old. So it was a really long journey and I could, when you said, like, when you navigate different home styles, different parenting, and really as a kid, you're just trying to survive too, right? Like okay, well, dad's like this. Okay, I got to do this. Mom's like this. You know what I mean? So it is challenging. And I think what happens is with a lot of us, um, we over we don't think about it as much as we should, right? Because the onus is on the legal, the onus is on the financial, and I think we kind of forget. Though we worry about our kids, I think we kind of forget what we're talking about today is how it affects them, but how we can consciously try to remember that they're there and how we can help them through it as well, or how we behave, right? I love the fact that you've talked about mirroring because that's what happens.
Yeah, and I'm also remembering one of our earlier conversations. We talked about grief during this time. And yes, as adults, we are grieving, then our kids are grieving as well. And they're grieving all the time because for them, as they're growing up, every single moment is now going to be different. Like when they graduate, when they marry, when they find a partner, when they win an award, when they lose a race, all those times they'll have either one parent or the communication is going to be a little bit different compared to, let's say, a bulk of the other kids around them. So they're constantly sort of comparing and going, well, for me, it's not like that. They are understanding that their world's different, and they're trying to find their feet in that. So, yes, as adults, we're very triggered, but our kids are going through a lot as well. So, even if they seem as if they're doing okay, and a lot of times they might try to do that, because if parents are falling apart, then the kids just need to hold the ground and be the good kid so that they don't get in trouble, so that they feel that they are loved as well, which is such a sad thing, right? Even if we don't want them to feel that they have to earn our love, just by the virtue of these circumstances, it's such a sad place that they are trying to fit in, and they're trying to win love. They're trying to be okay so that they're lovable.
Yeah, I just think so. For me, every time I would go to my dad's, I would cry myself to sleep because I was so attached to my mom, right?
Mhm.
Because back in the 70s when I only saw my dad every other weekend. There was no 50-50 back then like it is now, more so. So I think that's why I have a real passion for talking about this, because as you said, like I just pretended everything was normal, but I'd go to bed and I would cry myself and miss my mom, right? Because I never felt comfortable saying, I may have showed behaviors to my father that I was acting out, but at night I would cry, right? So this is why it's so important we talk about stuff like this, because the more people understand it, the more they're going to maybe see what their kids are going through, and then that can help the kids be felt heard or healing or
Seen.
seen, as you said. So what are some of the patterns that you see that can help, or you've seen that are like in the parenting or co-parenting that are troubling, or that you would, that you work with people to try to, you know,
Oh, lots of times. Like, there's so many bad examples. I wish we can move on and talk about the good ones, but I'll give you two, three places
yeah,
where
just
people
two or
get
three.
really, really caught up. So, one could just be an ego battle, and then the ego battle comes to custody, like you did this wrong, and so this is how it's going to impact custody. Like, you as the ex who wants to take revenge, it sort of becomes like, okay, I'm going to win this game. And how do I win this? Because let me impact the child. And so we forget the child. And it becomes that custody battle where I'm going to have the child for so many days and you're not doing this right and so on. And I have been at both sides of the situation. I've been in places where or I've seen clients as well where like the ex is really, really bad. Unless you have a reason of safety for your child, I still think the child needs to see both parents. That's why the child gets born from the mom and the dad, sperm and the egg. You need that for generally for the child to be born. Um, so instead of us acting out of ego, try and see what is it that the child needs. And sometimes the kids might be really young, but they'll change as well as they grow older. The situation that you see when they're 3 years old is going to be different when they're 13 years old. Maybe you can really hold them as a mom and like do everything for them at 3. And then 13, perhaps their needs will change as well. And maybe the boy will want the father more to talk about certain things, puberty, etc. And you if parents can just step back and think of the child, it often will result in a better outcome. And for that, go to your friends, whoever you trust, go to some advisors who can really be non biased and talk to them. Come to a centered place if you're doing any sort of energy healing. That's the work that I do. Those places, those centering places can be really good to help you find your calm and come from that. So that's one really big one where I see people just operating out of ego. The second bad thing would be when you start talking to your kids about it. Like you start telling them that, your mom or your dad, they did this. And your mom's like this, or your dad's always like this, and so on. And again, unless it's really required, you don't need to do it. Unless it's really required, you don't need to tell your kids why you separated, what was wrong between you two. Because here's the difference: you separated because you're adults, you had some adult differences. The child had nothing to do with it. Even if the separation happened because one person said, well, I can't take care of the kid, still the child had nothing to do with it. It was an adult difference that you can't take care of the child, and so the adults separated. If you think of the child, when the child is drawing their family, which is literally their basis of existence, this is how they understand themselves. This is what they say, this is my one parent, this is the other parent. That's what the child says, right? So when they draw their parents, they draw those two or more parents and whoever their caretakers are. That's how they draw that. That's their sense of identity. Don't take that away from your child. They'll grow up, they'll understand, they'll be smart enough to figure it out. For the mom, for the dad, like what happened, they will know. And if there are other parents as well, they'll know, they'll understand what happened. Trust that they will understand. You don't need to tell them everything. Plus, you want to allow them to have a good relationship, because maybe you fought with your ex, but maybe they're still a very good parent. Why don't you give them a chance?
Mm-hmm.
Like, give your child a chance, give your parent a chance, because that relationship might be the other end that they need. You really cannot do it alone. And then you can also relax because you will have the other parent. So that's the other thing, where parents can be really bitchy about each other, and it does not help the child at all. The third, which I don't see very often, but I have also seen those examples and they're really good, is if you can do certain things which are combined and you can do them together, like just bring certain things for the child where they can have some joint memories, maybe if that is Christmas or if that is birthdays, even if that has to be for a limited time. A lot of parents can't do it. I've known clients as well who just like, I cannot stand him or her. Again, it's not about the child, it's about the child. It is, your fight is not about the child. You have to think about the child, you have to think about the child's growth. So separate yourself, separate your ego from that and go, okay, what does the child want? You want to leave the child with memories where they have birthdays and their parents were present. Possibly, if you can do that, that would be a high road and highly encouraged to take. I don't know what are the other bits that you can do, because everybody depends on their journey and how far they are with that and how much compassion they can have or how much they can stand each other, really. But if you could, for the sake of your kids, let those moments be, even if they're just once or twice in a year. Have those. Your kids will thank you for that.
I was just thinking, like, the ego is such a strong um, form or personality, right? And it's so hard sometimes to understand it and to say, okay, this is not me, this is my ego, right? And we all have it. Like, we
Uh-huh.
all, that's our big, it's one of the biggest battles we have in life is our ego issues, right? Like, cause it's so, Eckhart Tolle talks about it all the time, about our ego, right? And so, is there any like tips or anything, like you name three common things that happen? Is there any two or three things that you can advise people to try to start conscious parenting? That they can, we talked about putting yourself as the child, like we're looking at your child as if you're that child. That's really helpful. Is there any other things that you can tell our listeners that, hey, maybe try this, maybe try this?
Yeah, and I think your comment around ego is really, really good as well, because often ego is at the root of everything. If you see divorces, custody battles, they would just be so much easier if ego wasn't involved. If you could just literally somehow take that whole negative charge and drain it out. Well, just pitching energy healing there in general. Because when you do any sort of centering exercise, particularly if you work with anything like energy healing, you're really able to drain off those negative charges. You're able to operate from a more centered self. The way to think about it on a day-to-day basis would be put up this measurement stick, right? Like whatever you want to do. Let's say you feel really angry and you like, okay, I'm going to do this around the custody battle, and this is the action I'm going to take. I'm going to have my child longer. I'm not going to have my child on Saturdays, Sundays, whatever it is that you want to change, whatever battle you want to do. Think about it and say, okay, just play with it a little while, just you, and just say, okay, today I win this. Supposedly, you even win that argument with your ex and you get everything. Play that out for another year and go, okay, 1 year from now, how will that feel? How will my child feel? How will I feel? Play that out a little bit later. Like just play a mental game. What are the consequences? What really happens? And play that out in your head. The other thing to really do, and that's where I love your work, Karen, because you have these support circles and you have your workbook as well, is just having those sounding boards, because I think we have too many wrong examples of how it should not be. That's just always thrown everywhere in the media around. Those are the common stories that we hear, but talk to people who've been on this journey for a while and people who seem more put together, like people who seem to be doing well, who seem to be the better examples, and just talk to them. And often they are very open and they'll tell you things, and their stories are what you can walk away with, and you can go, okay, this is what I don't want to do, and this is what I want to do. Like early on in my journey, I remember asking a few people that, like this and this happened to me, and I really feel like telling my child, but I don't know when I'll do that. And then my friend commented to me and he said, I don't think you ever need to do it. And he was right. And I'm so glad that I got that advice then, because we can allow our kids to be smart. We can let them be there. And I think that brings me to the third point as well here, is we take a lot on ourselves. Ego is also because we think like, oh, I've got to solve it all, right? Ego is also that I've got to correct it. Unless there's a defense part, there's also this part that if I don't save the situation, it's going to fall off. Sometimes you cannot act, or you can have a delayed reaction. Let all the drama and everything play out and try and just be chill in the calm if you can. Like watch a comedy movie if you're not grounding or anything, or go out, have a nature walk, sit with yourself, just have a cup of tea, connect with the earth, all the meditation exercises, all the calming stuff that you can do. Give yourself a lot of that, but try to not react, because everything does not have to be on your shoulders. And you know what? The more and more you keep doing it, the more and more you play that with your ex or with all the other people who are involved in that, the more and more you do it, the more and more all that conversation messages, they come back to you and they play more on your thought. So what if you just stopped? What if you did not engage?
Thank you for joining today's discussion with our divorce expert. Check out the show notes for more about our guest. If you're finding value in our podcast, follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our YouTube channel at Divorce Workshop. Share your questions, comments, or guest suggestions. We'd love to hear from you. For a comprehensive divorce guide, check out our Just Separated workbook on Amazon worldwide. This workbook covers everything from emotions and co-parenting to finances, legal insights, and recovery, a must-have for anyone navigating separation or divorce.